Part 30. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 291. Chapter 291 The Little Snake is Missed. In ancient times, Tengshi had the blood of a divine beast. He was unable to break through the final shackles because of his impure blood, so he wasted his time in this lower realm. But it can't be spent anymore. The lifespan of a 5th-level monster will not exceed 3,000 years at most. His lifespan is already 2,000 years. The Demon King came out of the secret room. He waved towards the space, and a small black bird appeared in front of him. He tapped the bird's head gently, and then he said to the bird, "Give me this person and the snake find it, notify me immediately after you find it, and don't tell anyone else." Of course this other person is the concubine beside him, so they can't be allowed to cut off her hair. The master and the servant didn't know that they were being targeted, but they still went about making trouble without scruples. She didn't let Mujukin and the others come out until another monster attack. In Yuan's consciousness, Mujukin was still asleep. She frowned. He was not a lazy person. He was practicing whenever he had free time. What happened today? She looked at the group of monsters and beasts, not going out for the time being because she wanted to see what was going on with Mujukin. She didn't know that she had just escaped the search of the White Wolf King and the little bird, and had temporarily escaped disaster. In the space, Yuhairan and the others were waiting. When they saw her coming in, they asked her, "Xiao Sier, did something happen outside?" Yuan shook her head and said, "We won't go out this time. You all go back to practice." Everyone nodded. Only Mr. Mu frowned because he didn't see Mujukin. Could it be that the two children are having a conflict? He noticed that something was wrong with Yuan's expression. He looked at Mujukin's house, stood for a while and went back. Yuan stood outside Mujukin's room. She reached out and knocked on the door. For a while, there was no movement inside, so she simply used her consciousness to check. "Mujukin," she exclaimed, immediately broke open the door, hugged him and ran towards the wooden house. In the wooden house, Yuan put him on the bed, immediately poured a replenishing pill into him, and then helped him dissolve the potion. "Mujukin, what's wrong with you?" After half a stick of incense, the spirit denifying elixir was completely dissolved. She checked his breath again, but it was still dangerously weak. She panicked and didn't know what he meant. No wonder she said she was still sleeping after not seeing him for so many days. It turned out that his breath was so weak that there was only a trace left. Normally, after taking a replenishing pill, the breath should be stronger no matter what. Why is it still like that? Yuan's spiritual consciousness immediately scanned his whole body. When it reached the sea of consciousness, his soul was floating in the sea of consciousness, and his breath was dying. There was a bang in her head. Mujukin was closing himself off and no longer wanted to live. Yuan didn't have time to blame herself. She quickly ran to the black pool to get a bottle of soul liquid, then sat next to Mujukin and closed her eyes. Suddenly, with a whoosh sound, a small figure the size of a fist ran out from between her eyebrows. He looked like Yuan. Yes, this is her soul. At this time, the soul can completely leave the body. She wants to use the soul to enter Mujukin's sea of consciousness to wake him up. If he doesn't wake up, Mujukin will die, his soul will die, and he won't be able to reincarnate. He really didn't want to live anymore. Yuan didn't have time to be sad about the spring and autumn. Shenhun picked up the jade bottle containing the soul liquid and entered the sea of consciousness from the center of his eyebrows. She could not help but shudder as she saw the darkness and desolation in the sea of consciousness. She opened the jade bottle and poured out the soul liquid, which fell on Mujukin's soul like heavy rain. "Mujukin, you are thinking so hard, didn't I just say a few words to you? If you die, I won't be alive, and everyone in our dimension will be buried with you. If you are willing to have so many people buried with you, just don't wake up. If you don't want to, just wake up. As long as you wake up, I will listen to you in everything from now on. If you ask me to go east, I will never go west. If you ask me, I will never kill a chicken. Yuan said while crying. You are stupid. How can a couple not quarrel? In the past, my parents would use a knife to fight. My father is a soldier, so he can't beat my mother, but every time, my father loses and is beaten until his nose is bruised and his face is swollen. Yuan kept bashing, 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 popping, 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 pop, 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 pop. Mujukin, who was in a coma, felt like he was lying in a sunless and cold place. He couldn't move, and he didn't know what happened to him. Disgusting, Mujukin, you make me sick suddenly. This sentence buzzed in his mind, and he couldn't get rid of it. That's right, Warner hates him and feels disgusted with him, so what's the point of his life? If he dies, Warner won't be disgusted if she can't see him? Yes, that's it, then just die. He fell asleep again in a daze. Well, why am I not dead? Did it rain and wake me up? It will clear up after the rain. The rain feels so comfortable. Mujukin woke up, but his eyelids were heavy and he couldn't open them. Come on. All I knew was that it was raining. Huh? Who is crying? What are you talking about? Mujukin listened carefully. Warner's voice? How could it be her? Mujukin felt that he was hallucinating. He didn't know where he was here, let alone her. And how could she come to him? How delusional he was. Huh, no, this was indeed Warner's voice. What did she say? Even if he dies, she will not be alive but will bring people to bury him with him. How is this possible? Still listen to him? Why doesn't he believe it? Huh? What parents? What was Warner talking about? Why did he become more and more confused the more he listened? Her father was a farmer. When did he become a soldier? Isn't it Warner? But the voice is yes, no, he wants to get up and figure things out, let alone let all the people be buried with him, he wants to stop it. Mujukin tried to get up, but he was too weak. What to do? Yes, run the exercises to recover. It was okay to lie down even if he couldn't sit up, so he immediately started the exercise. After Yuan poured out all the soul liquid in the bottle, Mujukin's sea of consciousness became less cold. It's just that his spirit is still the same. She stared at him blankly, hoping for a miracle to happen. She really had no other choice. Mujukin, why are you so stupid? Isn't life sweet? So many monks have wishful thinking about living, but you can't figure it out. If you leave me to die, I will remarry and give him a bunch of monkeys, which will make you regret it. Yuan lay on Mujukin, cursing and crying. God, she immediately stopped crying and opened her mouth wide, because the soul liquid in the sea of consciousness was being absorbed by Mujukin, and his aura was getting stronger. Is the soul liquid useful? She scooped up the jade bottle with a hiss and rushed out of Mujukin's sea of consciousness. She went to the black pool and filled another bottle of soul liquid into his sea of consciousness, and poured another heavy stream of water on his soul. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 292. Chapter 292 Announcement. Mujukin's only belief at the moment is to work hard to run his skills. He wants to wake up and stop Wanner. He doesn't want to die. He wants to live, even if Wanner doesn't want him anymore, he still wants to live. He is too selfish. If he dies, what will grandpa, parents, and the others do? Eh? Why is Wanner crying again? What? Wanner said she loves him. Really? Doesn't she dislike him? What? Remarry? Give birth to a monkey? What kind of monkey? Mujukin felt that his brain had become dumber and was no longer useful. Why couldn't he understand what Wanner said? He had better stand up quickly, walk out of this dark and midwinter place, and go back to ask again. I'm just wondering how he got here, I really can't remember. If you don't want to think about it, just practice. Huh, why is it raining again? When Mujukin started practicing his skills, he felt that the rain this time was heavy and heavy, but the rain felt very comfortable on his body, so he practiced with peace of mind. After Yuan poured out a bottle of soul liquid, she felt Mujukin's aura getting stronger again. She felt less uncomfortable, knowing that Mujukin had the will to survive. As long as he wakes up, she will never speak indiscriminately again. A knife may not kill someone, but words can. She has truly seen it. Monks who are not strong-willed are likely to become possessed by evil spirits. In the case of Mujukin, they are possessed by inner demons. Yuan really doesn't know what to say about this guy. It's wrong to say he's too infatuated, because the person he's with is her, and he must be infatuated with her and love her. It is even more wrong to say that he cannot be infatuated. She just lay on him quietly, feeling his breath gradually getting stronger, which made her feel a little more at ease. She looked at his face from time to time. She was so busy that she didn't notice his face. It used to be that the whole face was dark, but now the blackness was beginning to fade. Look at your father-in-law face. If you have a mobile phone, I will take a video of you and show it to you when you wake up. I guess you will have to scare yourself out. Do you still dare to do this in the future? Mujukin slowly felt that he had some strength in his body. While he was running his exercises, he heard a voice that kept nagging in his ears. It sounds good. Even though those words sounded strange, he still wanted to listen and would never tire of hearing them. Finally he could move and wanted to get up. Huh, are you so heavy? Is there anything on him? But it's warm. He wanted to reach out and hug her, but unfortunately he didn't have the strength yet. Mujukin, are you awake? Yuan, who was lying on top of him, felt that his body seemed to move, and she shouted in surprise. She did not wake up at all, but his aura became stronger. She would definitely wake up in another 10 days and a half. So she stayed by his side quietly, and when the soul liquid was not enough, she went out to add more. 10 days passed like this. Mujukin finally turned over and sat up. He looked at the dark place and could only get up and follow his feelings, at least get out of here first. He walked and walked. Finally, he saw a glimmer of light. So he let go and ran straight over. It's brighter, getting brighter and brighter. Finally he stepped on the bright place. Ah! It turned out that it was empty, so he stepped on it and fell down. Mujukin, Yuan suddenly heard him shouting, and hugged him tightly. Mujukin, what's wrong with you? Don't scare me, my little heart is already overloaded. Whose wife are you? That monkey's wife. A voice sounded like a thunderbolt. Huh, Mujukin, wake up. You heartless. She howled, and then with a whoosh sound, she left the sea of consciousness and returned to her true body. She met his open eyes. There were still tears on her face. He raised his hand and gently wiped it off for her. She lay gently in his arms. Mujukin, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. I really didn't mean it. Please forgive me for my indiscretion. Mujukin stretched out his hands and hugged her tightly. Well, I forgive you. It's just that you want to remarry and have a monkey with a monkey. What other explanations do your parents have? This. Yuan suddenly turned over and sat up. What's wrong? Mujukin asked in confusion, why Wanner's reaction was so big. Yuan asked seriously, Mujukin, do you believe me? Mujukin nodded, faith. Yuan, strictly speaking, I took this body. As for the reason, I don't know. Take possession of her body? That, Mujukin was startled. He looked at her strangely. He thought about this problem for a moment. Wanner was taken away from her body. Is it just that Wanner is still her now? Yuan waved her hand and said, don't worry, I'm still me, just listen to me slowly. Mujukin breathed a sigh of relief and nodded. He was scared to death. How could he allow other women to use Wanner's body? He had a momentary impulse to strangle her to death. Then Yuan added, I came through this body when I was 9 years old. I was in the original world on my way home from retirement. Yuan told Mujukin how she traveled from the earth to here. After Mujukin heard this, he asked, will Wanner disappear inexplicably one day? How is it possible that you are not surprised? Mujukin sat up, hugged her, shook his head and said, what's so surprising? We are monks, so what's the surprise? What I only care about is whether you are the one I love from the beginning to the end, Wanner. What I'm worried about is whether you will suddenly disappear again one day. What else is important? The rest is really not important, but I may not have the chance to go back. By the way, why did you become obsessed? You really can't go back. Is this what you care about? What do you want me to ask you? Mujukin rolled his eyes at her. You ask me, who can bear it? If it were you, could you calmly pretend that I didn't say it? Yuan smiled coquettishly, touched her nose, raised her head, and saw that his once handsome face had lost a lot of weight. She felt extremely guilty, and she said, I will never say such words again, and don't mention it again in the future. It's so embarrassing. If you can't stand it, you can just give me a good beating. She held his face and said seriously, after this incident, I knew I couldn't live without you. Don't you know what I was thinking at that time? I just thought, if you die, after I settle them all, I'll go and accompany you. Mujukin hugged her and sighed softly, fool, we monks don't know what will happen tomorrow today, not to mention that we are in a period of war. If one of us is really gone one day, the other one will have to live a good life. Go down, you know. You only have one life, cherish it. Yuan silently shed 2 lines of tears and did not answer. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 293. Chapter 293 Trap. Mujukin let her cry, he had to tell her to do that. If that day comes, it will definitely be him who dies. Wanner has space, at least her life is guaranteed, and her path to immortality is still long. She couldn't let her ruin her wonderful journey to immortality because of him. In Wanner's words, isn't it just that life doesn't taste good? But he will also try his best to live well, stay with her, go through the vicissitudes of this world, and reach the end of the immortal road. Okay, don't cry, you are such a big person. Mujukin patted Yuan on the back. Yuan nodded. She wiped her eyes and simply lay on him and closed her eyes. My mood has been ups and downs these days, and I am really tired. Soon, the sound of her even breathing reached Mujukin's ears. Haha, this girl. Mujukin shook his head and gently placed her beside him. Looking at her sleeping face, he took a deep breath and crossed his legs to continue to use his skills to recover. This time it was because his will was not strong enough and he easily allowed his inner demons to invade. But he really had no choice. Yuan was his weakness, and he could only try hard to prevent similar things from happening between them again. They in space don't know that the monsters outside are looking everywhere, but to no avail, they can only vent their anger on humans, causing countless humans to die from the mouths of monsters. The little bird sent by the Demon King also went back to revive. The Demon King quietly listened to the bird's report, then waved his hand and the bird disappeared. He frowned, thinking that the man and the beast must have some kind of invisibility magic weapon, otherwise they would not be able to disappear without a trace. He immediately summoned one of his men and gave him some instructions. After his men leave, immediately send a message to all battlefields. The 4th level monsters on the battlefield received the order and had to retreat early. Even the human monks find it strange, but they hope that the beast tide will end now. After the Demon King received the order from the demon beasts to retreat, he asked the demon beasts to gather together as much as possible, and no more attacks were allowed without his order. The White Wolf King seemed to understand what the Demon King meant, which was to lure the man and the snake out, so it fully cooperated. The Demon King also arranged for the demon beasts to ambush nearby. In the space, Yuan didn't know that a trap had been set for her outside. After she woke up, she felt that she had been refreshed and her consciousness had been somewhat strengthened. "Are you awake? Get up and eat when you wake up." Mujukin has recovered as before, but he is a little thinner. He puts the food in order. "Okay, why don't you practice for a while? I've given you a lot of soul liquid. You should absorb more and refine it." Yuan got up and looked at the delicious food on the table. Well, she was still living a comfortable life like this. "Do you want to go out?" After dinner, Mujukin asked Yuan. "Yuan, just the two of us go out and see what's going on outside." "Well, it's probably going on outside, let's see what happens." 3 years have passed since the beast tide began. Monster beasts have occupied almost 1/3 of human territory. Now is not the most intense time. So they are not in a hurry to play 2 games here. Just let Yu Heiran and the others concentrate on improving their cultivation. When the 2 people and the snake came out, everything in the consciousness was quiet. "Wan'er, are you so quiet?" "Well, could it be that the battle ended prematurely?" "It's possible, the monsters may be cultivating otherwise, why would the forest be so quiet, and even the city in the distance would be quiet?" "Little snake, let's look for it. If there is a monster nest, let's go fight it," Yuan said to the little snake. She was still used to the little snake. She was too slow to fly with her sword and couldn't take care of it and Muju. "Dust. Master, I don't think it's quite right," the little snake said. There were some powerful evil spirits in his consciousness, and they seemed to be everywhere. "What happened?" "I don't know, I just feel that the evil spirit is too strong, and I haven't had it before." Yuan also released his spiritual consciousness, and there was nothing wrong in the forest. She looked at Mujukin, and he shook his head. Yuan was puzzled. Normally little snakes were not so sensitive. Could it be that the monster had an ambush this time? Does the monster have a plan? Let's take a look. If there is any situation, we will enter the space immediately. If there is really any conspiracy and ambush, they are not vegetarians. The little snake nodded and began to search. They didn't know that this was the Demon King's conspiracy. He was afraid that the 4th level monsters that were ambushing around the group of monsters would be exposed, so he deliberately dispersed his monster energy in the air to interfere with Yuan's judgment. Sure enough, not long after, the 2 of them saw monsters everywhere in a large canyon. "Yuan, how about our sneak attack from underground this time?" The previous ones were all successful sneak attacks in mid-air, but now their defense in the air has been strengthened. Good, everyone and the snake agree. But let us not separate. One person and one snake nodded in agreement. So the two of them escaped underground and quietly approached the Grand Canyon. After half a stick of incense, there was indeed an explosion in the Grand Canyon. The Demon King in the distance curled his lips and smiled. This is a good idea. It has come true. This time he will do it himself. Master, we are surrounded, the little snake said to the two of them, who were happily throwing talismans. Surrounded, let's retreat quickly. There is no way to evacuate. The ground and the sky are full of fourth-level monsters. Master, I can also sense the breath of fifth-level monsters. The little snake was a little anxious at this time. Little snake, don't worry, let's go underground, Mujukin said through a message. Wanner, let's kill the fourth-level monster underground to help the little snake. Okay, no matter what, we have to kill a few of them, so that they won't be deceived in vain. By this time, the little snake had already burrowed deep into the ground, and then rushed sideways outside the encirclement. The underground is the home ground of the little snake. It takes two people to scurry here and there again. No matter how fast the fourth-level monster is, it cannot be faster than a small snake. Moreover, from time to time, Mujukin and his two men will send out soul thorns. In a short time, they rush into the encirclement. Whoosh, the little snake rushed out of the ground. Oops, they were locked by a fifth-level monster. As soon as they came out, a powerful aura locked them, and the little snake slowed down instantly. Little snake, don't worry about it, just fly to where we came from. There is a space crack there. Yuan sent a message to little snake and Mujukin. Being stared at by a fifth-level monster, their chances of escaping were slim, so the only option was to fight. There is really no way to escape. The most you can do is expose yourself to space. At most you can live in space for a lifetime, which is better than being killed. The little snake turned around decisively and flew towards the mountain range where they came from when they came to this continent. Humph, I still want to run away, but I can still run away under my eyes. The Demon King noticed their intention immediately, and he moved to catch up with the little snake. 20 soul thorns attacked him. Well, it's really harmful. The Demon King narrowly avoided it, which made him sweat. This divine attack was indeed harmful. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 294. Chapter 294. At the moment he paused, the little snake had already flown away. Damn it, today the King of Japan is determined to take your lives. The Demon King was furious, and he chased after him in a flash. But when he was about to catch up with them, Yuan and Mujukin used soul thorns to deal with him, so that the Demon King could never get close to them. The Demon King jumped angrily. He was ready to risk everything. Today, he would kill them even if they both lost. Little snake, are we almost here? Yuan asked, seeing that the Demon King was about to make a big move. Master, not yet, hold on. The little snake was struggling to fly at this moment. It was fast, but it couldn't compare with the fifth-level monster. Yuan was also furious. She said to Mujukin, Mujukin, we will use all our consciousness to kill that beast later, otherwise we will never escape. Okay, Mujukin held her hand tightly. He knew that they had put all their efforts into it. After sending soul stabs so many times, their souls were very tired. Having said all that, it only took 1 or 2 breaths for the Demon King to catch up with him again. The angry Demon King suddenly spit out a 3-foot large water ball from his mouth and attacked them with terrifying power. At the same time, the two of them used their last bit of soul power to send dozens of soul thorns towards the Demon King. Boom! Ah ah ah! The explosion of the water ball and the scream of the Demon King sounded at the same time. Click! The little snake was hit by the water ball, and its defense was broken. At the same time, Yuan and Mujukin watched helplessly as the terrifying force hit them. Mujukan couldn't protect Wan'er, and let the powerful attack hit them. An unprecedented force hit Yuan. She felt like her body was like a broken leaf being destroyed by the violent storm. What was left was pain, which was so painful that she couldn't help it. She wanted to catch something in her ups and downs, but couldn't catch anything. She desperately called for Mujukan and Xiaoxi, but she slowly lost consciousness. Bang bang bang, there were 3 loud noises, and the 2 people and the snake were finally blown away by the powerful force, and then fell down. After the spiritual power of the water ball dissipated, the forest was in a mess, with broken branches and leaves everywhere. Then the forest became deathly silent again. For a long time, the little snake blinked its eyes out of the mess and shook its head with great effort to wake itself up. It ignored its bruised body and searched for Yuan and Mujukan with its consciousness. It knew that with this power, they could survive. The probability is very small. But it has a contractual relationship with Yuan. It is not dead, which means that she is still alive, but even if she is alive, the situation will not be good, so they must be found. The little snake became smaller and moved its body to start searching. Finally found 2 people who had been injured and were unconscious and dying. Their vital signs were getting weaker and weaker, and the little snake became anxious. It tried its best to use some spiritual power to roll up the 2 of them and burrowed underground. This was not a place for healing. Maybe the 5th level monster is still looking for them. Finally, when its spiritual power was almost exhausted, there happened to be an underground cave. It jumped into the cave with great effort, took out the healing elixir and soul liquid from the space inside its body, and poured some into them both. After swallowing the elixir and soul liquid itself, it passed out completely. "Master, please wish yourself well," this is what the little snake said to Yuan before it fell into coma. It tried its best. Besides, after the Demon King outside tried his best to kill them both, he was indeed hit by several soul stabs, but Yuan and the others had no chance to let the soul stabs explode, so the Demon King fell to the ground after being hit by the soul stabs. He just fainted in the forest. Compared to Yuan and the others, his injuries were nothing to mention. But it is not that easy for him to force out the soul thorn. He will not die, but if he wants to use his spiritual consciousness in the future, he must force out the soul thorn first. So after he woke up, he searched for them at the same place and then quickly went back to force the soul to stab. This soul thorn really made him admire. If his soul was not strong and he was a chicken-level monster, he would probably be dead. It's just that even if he's not dead now, he will be tortured to death. The first thing he did when he returned was to ask the bird to find it. He regretted not taking the bird with him at that time. Although Zionio has a small mind, he still has no problem tracking the 2 people and the snake, and he believes that they can't escape far. The 2 human monks were hit by his attack and had to shed their skin even if they were killed. The Tang snake might still be able to survive. So he arranged for Zionio to find them, and he quickly forced out the soul thorns to see where they could go. Snort. After 2 streaks of smoke came out of the Demon King's nose, he quickly went into seclusion. In the underground cave, the little snake woke up first. After waking up, it immediately looked at Yuan and Mujukan and saw that their breath was still very weak. The little snake swallowed another bottle of healing pills. After its wounds healed, it rolled them up again and headed toward the crack. This continent cannot stay any longer. As long as the master wakes up, they might as well leave here. As soon as it left, the little bird came after it. It followed its scent all the way to a place not far from the crack, and then the little bird went back to report to the Demon King. The little snake didn't know that the danger was approaching, so it rolled the 2 of them into the ground, and then fed them both soul liquid. "Master, if you don't wake up, this soul liquid will be gone," the little snake said, staring at the little bit of soul liquid in the jade bottle. 5 days later, the little snake poured the last bit of soul liquid into Yuan alone. It thought that it would be easy as long as the master was conscious, and the master could not die anyway. At this time, Yuan still felt like she was floating. When the soul liquid entered the sea of consciousness, her soul seemed to be thirsty for a long time and suddenly drank water, desperately absorbing the soul liquid. In this way, a month passed. Yuan finally regained some consciousness, and she immediately remembered how she fell into a coma. Suddenly, she opened her eyes. Little snake, the first thing that caught her eye was the little snake guarding her. "Master, are you finally awake? Hurry up and collect your man," the little snake was overjoyed and said quickly. Yuan struggled to sit up, and sure enough, Mujukan was still unconscious. She didn't look much, and with a flick of her consciousness, she brought a man and a snake into the space. "Huh, it's finally safe." After Yuan put Mujukan on the bed, she let the little snake practice on her own. Then she went to the black pool to get the soul liquid for Mujukan to drink. After that, she also drank the soul liquid. Start meditating to recover. It took Yuan half a year to fully recover from the injury, and Mujukan also woke up. On this day, she called the little snake. "Little snake, is the 5th level monster not dead?" The little snake shook his head. He was only concerned about escaping for his life, so he didn't care about the 5th level monster. "That's it, then it's not safe for us to stay here. There is a 5th level monster staring at them at any time. How can they dare to show up, let alone go out to kill the monster again? It means that the entire continent is no longer safe." End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 295. Chapter 295 Xylan City. Yuan was thinking, why not leave this continent and go anywhere? When they become stronger one day, they will come back. But she thinks of the master Yao Kuang who she just worshipped, and she doesn't know how he is doing now. The master and apprentice occasionally had some contact before, but now no one responded to the messages she sent. She guessed that the old man died or was injured. "Master, why don't we leave?" Little Snake interrupted her at this time. Yuan nodded and looked at Muju who was still meditating. "Okay, I have recovered. Let's leave now. You just stay in the space. You can come out when you arrive." So Yuan's consciousness moved out of the space and escaped towards the crack. The Demon King, who had been waiting there for several days, finally waited for her to come out. He snorted. This human monk indeed had a magic weapon of invisibility. Suddenly, his 5 fingers turned into claws, and a huge black chicken claw, oh, it was a dragon claw clawing at Yuan. Yuan, who was escaping underground, immediately sensed the approaching crisis and used all her spiritual power to escape towards the crack. It is better to fall into the crack than to be caught by the Demon King. Applicants. The 5 fingers did not catch Yuan, they just thrust straight down from the top, and they would penetrate her to death. One is hiding from below and the other is thrusting from above, both of them are doing their best. Brush, a sharp black pillar was inserted behind Yuan, almost piercing her to the core. Hoo. It's just right. At this time, Yuan's speed was also slowing down, and the spiritual power in her body was almost exhausted. Did he enter the space again? It won't be discovered, right? No matter what, there are so many enemies at hand. This is underground. The soil and gravel underground helped her resist most of the strength of the black claws. If she had been on the ground, she would have been skewered. Yuan's consciousness moved and she disappeared. Heh, he's invisible again. This little human only has this trick. The Demon King punched the ground with a loud punch, and a big hole was made on the ground. Yuan, as long as this trick works. Shuhushua. The Demon King simply used his claws to dig her out, and he would dig her out. Invisibility can only be invisible, but the body cannot be hidden. He was a mighty 5th level demon king who couldn't handle a minor foundation building cultivator, and he felt very aggrieved just thinking about it. Hoo. Yuan gasped for air as she flashed into the space, and finally escaped again. It's just that the lunatic must be guarding outside, and he will keep guarding until I don't go out. Let's see how long he can guard. The Demon King outside dug out 10 feet of the ground, but he didn't even see a shadow of Yuan. So he used his spiritual consciousness to search inch by inch, not even missing a single insect. A few days later, the Demon King finally gave up his breath, leaving the bird to guard here before going back to preside over the battle. He is not the only 5th level monster. The position of the Demon King can be changed at any time, and he does not want to lose this position yet. The miserable Demon King wanted to catch both ends, but in the end he failed to catch either end and even injured his consciousness. It was simply not worth the gain. In the end, he could only vent his anger on the human monks. These hateful human monks, he wants to kill them all. So human cities were lost one after another and had to retreat inward. Even Shangchuan city was not spared this time, and only 1 out of 10 people evacuated. After Yuan recovered her spiritual power in the space, she came out of the space again. This time she carefully released her spiritual consciousness. There was only a stupid bird in her consciousness that was checking everywhere, and there was no such thing as the 5th level monster, so she tried her best to escape to the crack. You will feel relieved if you leave this continent as soon as possible. On the ground, the little bird noticed something moving underground. When it saw clearly that it was the person it was looking for, it immediately flew back to find the Demon King. Yuan had already arrived at the crack and had an experience. This time, the moment she entered the space, the silver bracelet fell smoothly into the crack and she was not injured. Yuan, who entered the space, breathed a huge sigh of relief and finally got rid of it. Hua hua hua, there was a sound of leaves being pulled away, and after a while, a person emerged from the pile of leaves. Ah, what a rich aura! Yuan took a deep breath before waving her hand to let the little snake come out. Master, we shouldn't be there anymore, right? The little snake also sensed the rich aura here. Yuan shook her head and said, I don't know, let's leave here first. This forest in the consciousness is very vast, but there are no monsters, but they are ordinary beasts. They don't know what kind of magical place they are coming to, so they should learn more about it first. Good. So the little snake carried Yuan and flew out of the forest. Kill. Suddenly, there was a shocking sound of fighting outside the mountains, as well as the roar of gongs and drums, and the sound of horses braying. Yuan looked with consciousness and saw that it was indeed 2 people and horses facing each other on a grassland. It is a war between 2 mortals. There is nothing to look at in this kind of war. She is a monk and can kill them with a wave of her hand. Let's go, little snake, there's nothing to see here, we'd better find a city. Master, you haven't noticed that although those soldiers have no spiritual power, they are all very strong. I saw it, it seems to be mysterious power. This place is very strange. Why don't you practice spiritual power with such a strong spiritual energy? As soon as Yuan came out of the space, she sensed that the aura here was much richer than that in the Xianling continent, more than twice as much. This place is very suitable for monks to practice. Little snake, I don't know, let's just ask. The little snake flew towards the human city. After flying for a day, the city was not seen, but the village was. So it continued to fly. Master, there is a city. Another day later, the master and servant finally saw a tall and majestic city. Xylan City. Yuan looked at the city below. The city covers an area of about 100,000 acres, and is divided into 4 gates, southeast, northwest, and entrance. There are more people in the city. The shops and residences inside are almost the same as those in the cities of the Great Yan Empire. The only difference is that the aura here is rich. It's really a strange place. There is not a single monk in the city. However, there are quite a few people who have that kind of mysterious power in their bodies, and their aura is not weak either. Yuan decided to settle here first. She let the little snake stop at the east gate. By the way, he collected the little snake and let Mujukan come out. Huh, Wan'er, the spiritual energy in this place is so strong, could it be that we have come to the spiritual world? Mujukan was also surprised. I don't know, the people here don't practice spiritual power, they all practice mystical power. Let's go in and have a look. Mujukan took a look and saw that it was indeed the case, so he said, okay then. The two followed the people entering the city to the city gate. The guards guarding the city saw that the robes they were wearing were different, and they just thought they were nobles from somewhere, and did not stop them. The two of them entered the city successfully. The two of them were not in a hurry to find a place to live, but found a bookstore and walked in. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 296. Chapter 296 Settlement. You must first understand this continent, what kind of continent it is, whether you are cultivating immortality or something else. What kind of books do you two need? Is it about geography, or about local customs, or about secrets on martial arts? As soon as the two of them entered, the bookstore owner started talking. The two of them couldn't help but touch their noses to hide their laughter. This boss is so cute. Ahem, boss, help us find some of the books you just mentioned. Let's take a look at the others first. Mujukan cleared his throat. Okay, sir and madam, please read as you like. After the boss said this, he went to find a book. Yuan randomly picked out a book and opened it to read. This is a story book. The font is the same as that of Dian Empire. The content is similar to Liang Shanbo and Zhu Yingtai. She flipped through it twice and put it back. At this time, the book that the boss found had been placed on the table. She stepped forward and picked up a copy of Dali Mountains and Rivers. This is just a travelogue. Looking at the name, I thought it was a geography book. Think about it, should you write down the mountains, rivers, cities, and towns of your country so that the world can know it, so that other countries can find out and attack you? It records all the places with good scenery, places that are suitable for reciting poems, and places that are suitable for enjoying flowers in front of and under the moon. In short, it is a mess. Somewhat useful is that this country is called Dali Kingdom. Looking at the content, this country is quite big. She picked up the secret books and looked at them again. Sure enough, they were all for cultivating mystical power. One of the benefits of practicing Xianli is that it can enhance physical strength. It starts with physical exercise. Yuan read one book, and she thought it was actually a martial arts practice. Martial arts cultivation does not require spiritual roots and can be practiced by all people. No wonder this bookstore sells exercises. Hee hee. In the end, the two of them bought a dozen books and left the bookstore. Wan'er, we can actually practice, the strength of our body will increase, and then our body will be able to withstand the thunder tribulation, Mujukan said. Well, that's what I meant. She saw Mujukan when he was going through the tribulation. She was about to go through the tribulation as well, so this body training technique came just in time. Let's go out of the city and find a small town to settle down. Every plant and tree here belongs to the Dali Kingdom. If you want to settle here, you must buy a house and land by yourself, and then you can register as a citizen of the Dali Kingdom. Yuan doesn't like the hustle and bustle of big cities. It's better to live in the countryside, where it's quiet and she can buy land and farm. You can also buy mountains with spiritual veins and grow spiritual rice and vegetables. She noticed that the crops in those fields were not spiritual food. In short, he brought her back to her original form and became a village girl farming. Mujukin understood what she meant, nodded, and the two of them left the city and flew to the first town they saw. There is Ivory Town with mountains on its back. It was already evening when they arrived in the town, and they randomly found an inn to stay. The next day, the two of them got up early and went to the house of the clerk in charge of the town. This clerk is a person sent by the county magistrate to take care of each town. The system here is the same as that of the Great Yan Empire, so Yuan and Yuan are close friends. Whoever you can rely on to get things done is reliable. For example, if you want to buy land and borrow it, you still have to contact the local officials and gentry. They can go directly to the county government office to get it done at once. Once you have a household loan, you can buy a house or land at a local yahang. The person who opened the door for them was an old man with gray hair. He asked, "Are you looking for our master?" The two nodded. The old man let the two people enter the yard and led them to the living room. In the living room, a middle-aged man of about 40 years old was drinking freshly brewed tea. His resolute face did not change due to the arrival of the two people, and he still had a serious look on his face. He looked at the two of them and motioned for the old man to get down. "I've met you, sir," Mujukin said, cupping his hands. At first glance, this man is a master of mysterious power. They will not underestimate him, especially Yuan, who suffered a loss at the hands of Chu Yongxiao back then. "Are you from outside?" The clerk in charge noticed that their accents were not from the local area, and stared at them with burning eyes. These two people are handsome and beautiful, just like the couple of gods. The clothes are strange, but the aura on his body is strange. It is not mysterious power, but it has a feeling that makes him feel very stressed. "Yes, we came here to escape the war and plan to settle down here," Mujukin replied. "The best way to say it is to escape from the war. Isn't there a war 300 miles away from Ivory Town? It's normal for people who come from the ravines there to have different accents." The clerk nodded. "This is a big town with a small population but a large area. When the two countries were at war, the food and grass supplies needed were not paid by the people of Dali. This food is number one. That's okay. You guys sit down. This is currently unowned land. You take a look first. Tell me where you need it. I'll go to the county town to help you with it this afternoon." The clerk took out a brochure and put it on the table, while he continued to drink tea. He is not afraid of their intentions. He is not a vegetarian. There are many masters in Dali, so he is not afraid of them making trouble. If you want to do anything, you won't do it in this corner. You can go straight to the capital. The two of them clasped fists at him, sat down, and looked over. Half an hour later, the two of them happily left the official's house and ran towards a mountain. Yes, they bought a mountain called Xiaohuangshan and 5,000 acres of land around it, which was enough for more than 20 of them to farm. The household borrowed information and gave it to the clerk. When the clerk saw that there were more than 20 people, old and young, men and women, he felt more at ease with them. In the end, they had no silver or black stones, so Yuan gave him a magic weapon to use to offset the money spent on buying mountains and land. In his eyes, magical weapons are simply magical weapons that cannot be exchanged for black stones. People are not unfamiliar with spiritual stones. There are many such mineral veins underground in Dali. It is best to get a large piece to polish and carve into a jade pendant. After all, it is milky white, and the color is still beautiful. We're right." When the two of them reached the mountain, Mujukin breathed in the rich spiritual energy. "Well, there will be no problem for us to practice here until we reach the stage of becoming gods. By then, she will definitely return to Xianling continent and kill all those monsters. Leave no one behind to avoid future troubles. Then our house should be built here." He looked towards the mountains. "We need to build it here too. Our cultivation place should go into the mountains. A cunning rabbit needs 3 burrows, not to mention they are monks. The cave where they practice must be somewhere no one knows. Mujukin nodded. So Yuan moved Yuhairan and the others out. Huh, Xiao Sier, the aura here is so rich. Yes, yes, eldest brother, fourth sister, this place is great, I like it. Xiaoliu pulled her excitedly. Yuan rolled her eyes. Is it as rich as the aura in her space? End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 297. Chapter 297 Marriage. When everyone was happy enough and things were going well, Mujudian took half of the people to the mountains, while she built a house on the mountain with the people who stayed. You don't need others to build it, it's simply not easy to do it yourself. Along the way, they have built so many houses that they have almost become experts in construction. It took 2 waves of people 3 days to build all the houses, and also obtain the land deeds and personal household registration certificates. After everything was arranged, Yuan was ready to go into seclusion and refine the elixir again, but before that, she had to go deep into the mountains to find the elixir. When Mujukin brought people in to build the cave, he found that there were elixirs all over the place, including 3rd-level elixirs. This made the whole group extremely happy. Waner, I'll go in with you. Yuan shook his head and said, no, you practice your own medicine. There is a little snake here, so what do you have to worry about? Having just settled down, there are many things to do. This mountain and this land have been bought, so we need to plant them quickly. We have to hand over a lot of grain every year, and we can't pay it in money. They also understand that the current war between the 2 countries requires a large amount of military supplies, especially food, which can only be grown in the ground. Yuan has space, and the elixirs grown in the space are not small. The amount of elixirs needed by the 20 or so people is not a small amount. Everyone needs 2nd-level elixirs. 2nd-level elixirs require elixirs that are at least 100 years old to refine, so it is impossible for her to use elixirs to grow food. What's more, the spiritual rice and vegetables they eat come from space and already occupy several acres of land. Fortunately, after building the foundation, we can go out into the valley, and it doesn't matter whether we eat or not. Well, be careful. Mujukin could only compromise. Since the last time he was immersed by his inner demon, the 2 of them would do things through consultation and not forcefully. Yuan hugged him and nodded to him, jumping onto the back of the little snake and flying towards the deep mountains. One day later, Yuan reached the mountains and asked the little snake to find what she liked to eat. She summoned the spiritual and looked at the elixirs all over the mountains and fields. She felt surprisingly calm. No one wanted to compete with her, so she started digging for the elixir. Yuan only picked 2nd and 3rd-level mature elixirs and elixirs that were not available in the space. This digging took a full month before she returned home with a full load. She went into the space to refine the elixir that night, because she had found all the elixirs for the golden elixir deep in the mountains. In the space, Mujukin helped Yuan. Waner, now that we have settled down, let's get married. Mujukin looked at Yuan, who was seriously handling the elixir. Okay, Yuan agreed readily. She knew that with this support, the marriage would happen sooner or later. What if she got pregnant before the marriage? You can't abort the child. At a glance, she was 26 and it was time to get married and have children. It's not like the monk really doesn't care about the world. While she is cultivating immortality, she also wants to have a warm home. Thinking of getting married, her 3 brothers are still single. Hey, Mujukin, you said that my eldest brother and the others are still single. Do you want them to see if there are any suitable ones among my female disciples? Yuan put down what she was doing and spoke to Mujukin seriously. Well, I think it's feasible. The money won't go to outsiders. Didn't you notice the way Shita looked at Xiaoliu? What look? Do you mean Shita likes us? Xiaoliu? Well, I'm a man, so of course I understand that look. Stone, Yuan thought, thinking that the child was also in his 20s, good-looking, had the highest cultivation level among the 14 of them, and had a protective personality. She thought that if they became a couple, Xiaoliu would not need to worry about her for the rest of his life, and she would feel relieved. When she has finished refining the elixir, she will go out and ask her elder brother what they think. Everyone is an old bachelor. Now that they have settled down, it is time for everyone to consider their personal matters. There will be no accidents like the Xianling continent, this will be their base. Wan'er, are you thinking about your elder brother and the others? Yuan glanced at him and nodded, we can talk about this later when we go out. Now I'll refine the golden elixir. Good. The two quickly cleaned up the elixir, and Yuan began to refine the elixir, while Mujukan returned to the wooden house to practice. 10 days after the space, Yuan put away the jade bottle, and this time refined a total of 20 top-grade gold binding elixirs and 42 top-grade gold binding elixirs. If this were placed in Xianling continent, I'm afraid it would be sold for a sky-high price. Have you finished practicing? Mujukan watched the exhausted Yuan come back, and he hugged her distressedly and put her on the bed. Come on, Wan'er, let's have something to eat and then have a good sleep. Mujukan immediately took out a bowl of steaming 4th-level monster soup. Okay, Yuan took the bowl and drank it. She really felt hungry. After 10 days of high-intensity alchemy refining, no matter how strong her consciousness was, she couldn't withstand it. What's more, her spiritual power is simply not enough to refine 3rd-level elixirs, and she relies entirely on her powerful spiritual consciousness. Sleep until you wake up naturally. The two of them did this and that before they came out of space and walked out of the cave. The two of them share a cave, which was specially built for them. Is eldest brother here? The two of them walked outside Yuhairan's cave and knocked on the door. Yuhairan was about to go out when he heard a knock on the door, and he opened the door immediately. Xiao Sier, the eldest brother said he was looking for you. Looking for me? What's the matter? You two are living together. I have discussed it with my uncle and grandpa Mu as to whether the wedding should be done. It will be a good day in 3 days and we will arrange your marriage. Yuhairan let the two people into the room, said angrily, and gave Mujukan a knife edge. His sister was coaxed into his possession before they got married. Mujukan touched his nose and smiled, sitting next to Yuan and opposite Yuhairan. In return, Yuhairan rolled his eyes. We have discussed it, and we are going to talk to my eldest brother about this matter. My mother has already prepared the things for getting married. Mujukan didn't wait for Yuan to say anything. He immediately said that he is a big man about this important matter of getting married. You can't hide behind Wan'er. Have you agreed? Yuhairan looked at Yuan. It was obvious that Mujukan's words were not strong, and his sister had the final say. Well, it's agreed. It's just right. I want to ask eldest brother. That stone seems to be interested in Xiaoliu. What does eldest brother think? And I'm about to get married. What are your 3 brothers' plans? You can't be single forever. Bar. What are you talking about? We are still singles. The 3 of us have no plans to get married yet. Trouble. When we get the elixir and have enough life, we are afraid that we will not be able to find a wife. As for Xiaoliu, I think the stone is okay. I have been paying attention to this guy for a long time. He is always courteous in front of Xiaoliu and his character is not bad. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 298. Chapter 298 Getting Married. Yuhairan does not object to his sisters finding a good home. As the eldest brother, he will be happy if he can see that his younger brothers are living a happy life. Yuan was speechless. What is trouble? Are they women trouble? She turned her head to look at Mujukan. Mujukan was puzzled by her look and scratched his head. After the brother and sister discussed the wedding day, Yuan left Yu Heiran's cave and went to Mr. Mu's cave to talk about some things. Because there are not many people there, they don't need to treat guests, so everyone can just have a good time on that day. 3 days flew by. This morning, the whole valley was filled with joy and red silk was hung everywhere. This red is dotted on the green of the valley. It is obviously ugly enough to match, but it feels like it has been made green, fat, red, and thin by Yu Heiran and others. It's really eye-catching. There was no playing or singing from the welcoming team, but there were brothers, sisters, and her apprentices singing and dancing, making the atmosphere very lively. Yuan was very moved when she saw it in her consciousness. Mr. Gao came early in the morning to dress her up and put on the wedding dress embroidered by her and Mrs. Su. As soon as she put on the bright red brocade wedding dress and the phoenix crown, the stunning beauty in the mirror was stunned. She was so beautiful. I am used to wearing plain colored cassocks, but when I put them on like this, I was blinded. Fourth miss, the time has come, I will put a hijab on you, Gao reminded her at this time. Mrs. Gao looked at the master in front of her with a smile, feeling as if a daughter in our family had grown up. She breathed a long sigh of relief. Her master finally got married today, and her eyes turned red unconsciously. She has a good life thanks to her master's insistence on this old bone. Later, she also found out why her master took these people to leave the great Yan Empire. It turned out that they were all immortal cultivators, and they would all be like gods from now on. The master is like a god. Okay, Yuan nodded. After Mrs. Gao covered her with a red hijab, she waited for Yu Heiran to carry her out. At this time, there was already a commotion outside the house. Everyone put on festive clothes and blocked the door. Mujukan, who was wearing a red Xinlang official uniform in the distance, was stopped by Xiao, Xiaoliu, and Xiaoqi. Mujukan took out 3 red storage bags and gave them to the 3 of them. After looking at them, they let him go. Yu Heiran saw the 3 little ones getting red envelopes, and he strode into the house. Xiao Ser, my eldest brother is here to marry you off. The voice was a little choked, with a mix of reluctance and joy. Okay, Yuan stood up and lay on Yu Heiran's bowed back. Yu Heiran slowly carried her on his back and walked out of the house. In Yuan's memory, this was the second time Yu Heiran carried her on his back, and the first time was the real original owner. She was still young at that time and didn't understand anything except asking her eldest brother to carry her. Yu Heiran, who was still young, had to take his second and third sons with him to work in the fields with Yu Dahai. It was not easy to carry her even once. Now she is lying on this strong back, feeling indescribable satisfaction in her heart. This is her eldest brother, the eldest brother who carried her to get married. This time, she truly feels connected by blood. Xiao Ser, be happy today is your happy day. Yuan burst into tears in Yu Heiran's consciousness. He felt distressed and sad. I'm afraid I miss my mother. My parents should be here today. Yuan nodded, waved her hand gently, and her face was clean. Outside the door, Mujukan, who was like a dripping fairy, stood waiting and saw Yu Heiran carrying Yuan out on his back. He quickly stretched out his hand to support Yuan. Yu Heiran stood up and looked at Mujukan with piercing eyes. His voice was indescribably serious. Mujukan, I hand Xiao Seer over to you. You must treat her well and not let her be wronged. Yes, we still have us, otherwise we will beat you to pieces. As soon as Yu Heiran finished speaking, 5 brothers and sisters of Yu Hao jumped out in front of him. Xiaoliu waved his fist and said fiercely. There are us. Master, if you are wronged in the future, we will not let you go. Shitu led the 13 people and said fiercely. Okay, Mujukan dare not agree. Besides, it was always him who was wronged. Sky. Please let me go. Mujukan bowed to their elders and said, Big brother, second brother, third brother, 5, 6, 7, and she too, please rest assured. Even if I bully myself and wrong myself, I can't treat Warner badly. Yuharan nodded, then let's set off. The so-called starting point is just walking from Yuharan Cave on the left to Mr. Mu Cave on the right to pay homage. Mujukan happily hugged Princess Yuan and left. Entering Mr. Mu's cave, Mr. Mu and his wife were already sitting in high seats, waiting to worship heaven and earth. And Fen Yuan became the host of the wedding. He is a dignified emperor who presided over the wedding of his niece. Thinking about it, I was both happy and unwilling. Why should he shout worship here when the former minister was sitting in a high hall to be worshipped? Fen Yuan gouged out her eyes fiercely at old man Mu. Mr. Mu stroked his beard and pretended not to see it. Ahem, cough, cough, your majesty, it's time to say goodbye. Fen Yuan didn't die on the spot. At this time, he still called him the emperor. Afterwards, let's see how they compare and discuss. Snort. Ahem, cough, cough, Hongluan's heart is beating today. Mujukan of the Mu family and Yuan of the Yu family are a match made in heaven, the two houses are willing to marry Qin and Jin. Fenjiu and Balabala said a congratulatory speech. Worship the heaven and the earth. Yu and Wan turned around, facing the door, knelt down and kowtowed heavily. When they finished kowtowing, the sky outside was filled with glow. Huh, is this a blessing from heaven? Everyone was immediately surprised. Yuan frowned. She didn't think this was a blessing from heaven, but more like a reminder. Remind them that there is a way of heaven here, which can help monks overcome disasters. Should the people here also practice immortality? Two bows to the high hall. Fen Yuan felt extremely happy. His niece's marriage was a good one. God had come to bless her, so he couldn't wait to shout again. Afraid of turning yellow, Yuan and the others turned around and knelt down again, and kowtowed respectfully to Mr. Mu and the three people sitting in the chair. Husband and wife bowed to each other. The two stood up, each took a step back, and they bowed deeply to each other. She and he will be husband and wife in this life. She is his wife in this life. He is her husband in this life. Mr. Mu sitting in the seat was smiling all over his face. Fen Yuan curled her lips. Sent to the bridal chamber. Mujukan took Princess Yuan back to their cave. There will be nothing to do with Yuan later, just wait for the wedding night. She sat quietly in the room alone, thinking about the reminder of Dao just now. No one here is cultivating immortals, but the spiritual energy is rich. She just thought that they and their group can practice here with peace of mind until they become gods. It would be great if they could ascend to the spiritual world. It is okay not to ascend. The lifespan of the transformation stage can also be 2,500 years. Century. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 299. Chapter 299, Bridal Night with Flowers and Candles. What will it be like here 2,500 years from now? Are there also monks walking all over the place? When cultivation resources are insufficient, do you still kill people and seize treasures, causing a war? Yuan didn't understand why heaven reminded her. Suddenly, her mind suddenly flashed. Could it be that heaven was telling her not to spread the practice? Without monks, the above situations would not occur, and then this continent could truly continue to exist. Thinking of this, Yuan breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, she calmed down and thought about it. Monks should not do anything that goes against the law of heaven. Don't offend heaven. If the monk offends anyone, he will make you doubt your life. It was getting dark and it was getting quiet outside. Wan'er, Mujukan entered the cave smelling of alcohol, and he activated the formation at will. He hugged Yuan and finally felt at ease in his heart. Yuan was really speechless. He was obviously a monk, but he acted like a mortal, and yet he drank so much wine that he could hardly speak. "Waner, come on, it's time for us to drink hexen wine." After Mujukin said that, he went to the table and poured 2 glasses of spiritual wine. Yuan twitched her lips. Shouldn't the first step after coming in be to remove the hijab? When did Mujukin become so impatient? How can you drink Henu wine without uncovering your head? Oh, I forgot. Mujukin patted his head and put the wine glass back. Mujukin sat back on the bed and opened the hijab with the prepared yuruyi. Beautiful, Waner is so beautiful. The moment the hijab was lifted, Mujukin's eyes widened. He had always known that Waner was stunning, but he didn't expect that she was so stunning in a bright red wedding dress. The golden crown, the clouds of clouds, and the smart beauty is the small cayenne nose, a chocolate lip that is not ordered. Gilu, Mujukin swallowed unconsciously. Drink hexen wine, Yuan scolded him. This was not the first time this idiot had seen her. Oh. Mujukin hurriedly picked up the hexen wine glass. The 2 of them crossed their arms and drank 2 glasses of hexen wine. Mujukin put down the wine glass, smiled silly at Yuan and said, "Daughter-in-law. Waner is my real wife." Yuan was dazzled by his smile. She usually dressed the same as her, but today she was wearing a bright red wedding dress that made him even more handsome. "Daughter-in-law." Mujukin called out to Yuan, whose eyes were a little shaky. Yuan came to her senses and blushed. Just now she was talking about Mujukin, so she was also a nymphomaniac. They could be considered an old married couple, and they were still fascinated by him. Yuan's lips unconsciously raised. It didn't matter that he was blushing, Mujukin was fascinated again. He roared and couldn't wait to overwhelm Yuan. The red candle was swaying on the table, and the red Luan San tent on the bed covered the shameful scene. It wasn't until dawn that the 2 of them tossed about, and then they gradually stopped, and the people in the red Luan San tent fell asleep quietly. An hour later, the 2 of them opened their eyes leisurely. "This morning is the day for my daughter-in-law to serve tea." "Get up," Yuan shouted. "What are you doing up?" Mujukin asked, looking like he wasn't full. "Here's tea, your parents are probably impatient." "No, no, no," Mom and Dad said, "we are all a family, there are not so many rules, let us do whatever we want." Mujukin waved his hand, and then rushed towards Yuan. Yuan rolled her eyes, but knowing that he was not full, she let him do whatever he wanted. They were both monks, so this physical labor was not tiring for him, but it only hurt her throat. The 2 of them had a great conversation. In the valley, except for Mr. Mu and Fen Yuan, who were sparring, the other people were either practicing or flying to Xiaoqingshan to take care of the crops they planted. 5 days later, the 2 of them left the cave and had tea with Mr. Mu and the others. After that, Yuan decided to retreat. This retreat is mainly about practicing the technique of cultivating Xian Qi to increase the strength of the body, and then prepare to form elixirs. Mujukin knew that she was going to retreat, so he took people to the mountains to collect medicine. The first is to let everyone practice more. The training is not just about fighting and killing monsters. They are all monks in the foundation building stage, so they have to find their own training resources. It's not okay to put everything on his wife. His wife will have to give birth to a monkey for him in the future, and there is no time to take care of so many of them. Although there are no monks here, it does not mean that there is no danger. Being strong yourself is indispensable, no matter where you are. He wanted to learn alchemy for those with fire and wood spiritual roots, and learn to refine weapons for those with only fire spiritual roots like him and she do. There are no spiritual weapons, magical treasures, or spiritual treasures for sale here. In the future, whatever you use will have to be refined by yourself. By this time, Yuan had already entered the training room and started practicing. There is no profound energy in the space, so we can only retreat outside. She sat down and after memorizing the exercises, she began to use the breathing power mentioned above to open the first acupuncture point on her body. They are monks, and their dantians are filled with spiritual energy, so they do not need to absorb mysterious energy to store the dantian. They only need to absorb the mysterious energy to directly open the acupuncture points, and then use the mysterious energy to continuously refine their bodies. After the acupuncture points that need to be opened all over the body are opened, the first level of bone refining can be started. Then there is the second layer of skin refining. The third level is refining the internal organs. The fourth level is the meridians refining. The fifth level is blood refining. Sixth level of soul refining. Why is there spiritual energy? When Yuan absorbed the mysterious energy, she also sucked in the spiritual energy. She stopped immediately, and then looked at the technique carefully to make sure it was correct. She thought that since she was a monk and had spiritual awareness, she could naturally distinguish between the mysterious energy and spiritual energy. So she started to breathe again and began to attack the first acupuncture point. In addition to the original 360 acupuncture points on the body, there are also other acupoints that Yuan has never heard of or seen. For example, the first acupointment starts from the Xiaoguan point on the little finger of the left foot, and goes around the whole body to the Xiaoguan point on the right foot, forming a cycle. Yuan really admires the person who developed this technique. It's like he has reached the sixth level of cultivation in this technique. This person's strength is beyond that of a god. Of course, if she can make it, she won't have to worry about being struck by lightning. But just opening up the acupuncture points of the whole body is a big project, and it cannot be completed in a day or two. 1008 acupoints, how many years and months will it take to fully open them and start bone refining? But for a monk, especially a foundation building monk like her, this time is a time for her to retreat. A few years will pass as soon as you close your eyes and open them again. So Yuan struck the Xiaoguan point seriously. 5 days later, a pop sound came from her consciousness, and the Xiaoguan acupointment was successfully opened. When a large amount of profound energy and spiritual energy poured into the Xiaoguan point, Yuan no longer felt strange. In fact, this technique can be practiced with spiritual energy even without xianqi. It's just that the suanqi here have no spiritual knowledge and have not cultivated immortality, so they don't know. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 300. Chapter 300, Opening Up the Acupoints. Yuan broke through the first acupuncture point very quickly. She was a monk who had the spiritual consciousness to look inside and hit a point on the acupointment. No matter how tight the acupointment was, she could break through it. So speaking of it, it is much easier to practice this technique after becoming a monk than it is for a metaphysician. It took Yuan 4 days to break through the second acupointment. Just like this, as long as one breaks through, Yuan will take a rest before continuing the attack. Spring passed and autumn came, 1 year passed after another, 5 years passed quietly. I finally opened up all the acupoints in my body. Yuan opened her eyes and breathed a long sigh of relief. Supposedly, there are 360 acupoints that can be opened. In fact, there are more than 600 acupoints that need to be opened. How can it take 5 years? The reason why it took so much time is that the acupoints in the internal organs and head are too small, so we can only polish the acupoints slowly and then attack them when they are almost ready. Like other large orifice points, it rushes violently and is destroyed within a short time of exiting the acupointment. That's why it took so long. The first level is successful in opening the acupoints, and the second level is bone refining. Yuan was not in a hurry to retreat. She left the training room and came to the valley. The valley has not changed much, it is the same as before. She scanned the valley with her consciousness and found that everyone was in seclusion in the cave. Only Mrskau, Mrsu and Mrsu were doing needlework in the room. Through these years, they have maintained this habit and wear clothes made by themselves. Yuan walked towards their cave. Mother, second aunt, hi aunt. Ah. It's Wanner. Are you out of seclusion? Mrsu quickly put down her sewing and asked Mrskau to bring out all the food. Yuan couldn't help but irritate them, so she ate all the food brought out by Mrskau. Fourth Miss has a great appetite, just like before. Mrskau put away the bowl and chopsticks with a smile. Mom, what is this little dress you made? Your sister-in-law is finally pregnant, and the grandson she has been waiting for so many years is finally here, Mrsu said with a smile, then sat down and started making clothes, making gestures with the fabric from time to time. Yuan is also happy for them. It is difficult for monks to get pregnant. This is because everyone has been practicing for so long. The eldest sister-in-law is the only one who is pregnant. The first one is of course her mother. Her mother's fertility was simply unparalleled, and no one could surpass it. 9 children, I don't know if there have been any more over the years. Yuan, well, more children will make it more lively. Yuan knew that the 3 women could not practice cultivation. They spent a lot of time in seclusion on weekdays, and they had little work to do. People tend to think wildly when they are free. If they have a child to take care of, their lives in the future will not be so boring. Yes, Miss Fourth, please hurry up and give birth to a baby. My old slave can still carry it for you now, Mrskau also said to her. Yes, Wanner, let's give birth as soon as possible while we are still young and can take care of her. If it's too late, I'm afraid my mother won't be able to wait for that day. Mrsu looked sad and glanced at Yuan. Mrsu's expression naturally fell into Yuan's consciousness. She frowned. Is Mrsu complaining about her? She glanced at Mrsu and Mrsmuer, and saw that they both had similar expressions at the moment. Are they complaining that she gave Mr. Mu their skills back then? Or shouldn't we take their family out? If she doesn't send them the exercises, Mujukan will find them for them to practice. Then it's her fault for bringing their family out. She sighed deeply. There was nothing that could be done about it. The most they could do if they stayed in the Great Yan Empire was to reach the perfection of foundation establishment, and they would not be able to make any progress. It was not only her who ruined her journey to immortality, but also Yuhairan and the others. Just after they came out, Mrsu and her sisters-in-law could not practice cultivation, so you can imagine the life they had. Grandsons are hard to hold in your arms. Men only know how to practice in seclusion and put them aside. That ideal life is far away from them. She, the chief culprit, was naturally blamed by them. They don't have spiritual roots, so they can definitely cultivate mystical power. Why did she ignore it, and Mujukan also ignored it? Or do they not want to practice? Practice Xianli to increase your lifespan. After opening up the acupoints all over the body and practicing bone training, it is equivalent to a Qi training monk, and there is no problem in living for more than 100 years. This way they can have more time to live with everyone. They are at most 50 years old now. With her as an alchemist, she can use elixirs to assist them in their cultivation. When Yuan thought of this, she immediately asked, Mother, second aunt, and Aunt Gao, why don't you also practice Xianqi? You don't need spiritual roots. You can also increase your lifespan if you practice it. Real. Mrsu simply screamed out in surprise, not at all like her usual ladylike self. Yuan secretly thought that it was true. No one wants to live a long life and stay with the people they love. Yuan nodded towards Mrsu, if Mom wants to practice, I will help you take a medicinal bath starting tonight. Fourth Miss, can I be an old slave too? Mrs. Gao was not as happy as Mrs. Su. She was almost 60 years old, and she had to hesitate whether to practice or not. Aunt Gao, as long as you are willing, I can help you. Even if it fails, if you open an acupuncture point, you will be younger. The body has the accumulation of spiritual energy, which can also extend your life. The old slave should give it a try. When his body and bones heal, he can help the fourth lady take care of the children, as well as the eldest young master and the others. Aunt Gao, don't you want to live longer? Yuan said that her head hurt just because she wanted to take care of her children. Gao Shi smiled innocently at her. Mrs. Muer has the two of them taking the lead, and she can't do it even if she doesn't want to. She can't just watch herself grow old before them all. So the three of them happily started taking medicinal baths tonight. As they get older, their bodies begin to age in all aspects. Medicinal baths can soften and expel impurities from the body, which will make their cultivation much faster. It was night, and Yuan placed 3 large wooden barrels in the space. The space-time should be faster, and it could be done in one night. Mom, second aunt, Gao aunt, this medicinal bath is a bit painful, you have to endure it and don't get up. After Yuan finished the medicinal bath, she specifically warned them that if they couldn't stand the pain during the process, all the previous efforts in the medicinal bath would have been wasted and they would have to start over and endure the pain one more time. Okay, the three of them confidently entered the bathtub wearing only their underwear. Hiss, as soon as they sat down, their cries of pain came. Fortunately, the three of them gritted their teeth and persisted. Yuan also admires the three of them. If she were to do so, she would probably be embarrassed. Let alone the three of them being mortals, they are still middle-aged and elderly women. Sure enough, women can endure pain. The pain of this medicinal bath is no less than the pain a woman experiences when giving birth. Mrs. Suda and Mrs. Muer are doing better. They have given birth to children at a younger age than Gao, and they can still endure it. End of this chapter.